It's time to get sexy, so watch Secular Sexuality Live Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTSS and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callsex.
Hello, and welcome to Talk Heathen, the show that takes a long, deep sniff from the sweaty armpit of theism and gags mildly before dousing it with a deodorant of logic and reason. I'm Lloyd Evans.
I'm ObjectivelyDan. I wasn't ready for that. We didn't prep for that, Lloyd. Yeah, Jesus Christ.
I'm telling you, these metaphors, they need to be included at the start of the show.
I'm not disagreeing with you. It's just, you got to give me some warning there because deodorant. We went the deodorant route this morning. That's okay.
It worked for me. It won't work for everyone. In any case, before we take some calls, I have something I need to get off my chest. You see, it's all well and good identifying as an atheist, but what about those of us who like a bit of positivity in their atheism? Well, Talk Heathen, this very show, is a product of the atheist community of Austin, and the atheist community of Austin, or ACA, is a 501c3 organization dedicated to the promotion of positive atheist culture and separation of religion and government. Isn't that nice?
I think so. I think it's pretty cool, but
in my opinion, the finest one of its kind in Austin.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, yeah. I definitely.
And there are many ways to support the ACA and Talk Heathen. You can become a member. You can click the join button below the video. You'll get custom chat icons, and you'll be immune to the chat frequency limits, so you won't get the slow mode. You could also support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Talk Heathen to me. So lots of ways that you can support the show. Why don't we get straight into our first caller?
Yeah, I'm down for it. If you are, let's do it.
Okay, so Robin from DC, you are on Talk Heathen. How can we help you?
Hi, I just heard your very creative intro, and I think this ties in pretty well with my question. You talked about combating belief, or at least withholding belief in theism using logic and reason. As atheists, why would you be critical? Yeah, as atheists, why would you be critical? Yes, it was very very colorful illustration.
Thank you.
But I'm curious as to why you guys as atheists would be critical about anything if nothing can be defended to be impossible. On what grounds would you be critical about any state of affairs?
So nothing can be proven to be impossible. Nothing can.
Yeah. Well, in your worldview, nothing can be defended to be impossible. Do you
object to that? It just so happens on my desk there is an egg. So I could say to you, Robin from DC, I laid this egg earlier. It could be that I laid the egg earlier, or it could be that for some inexplicable reason, I like to keep an egg on my desk. The fact that it's anatomically impossible for me to lay an egg discounts the idea that I laid the egg and makes it infinitely more likely that I just have an egg on my desk. So when you say it's impossible for anything to be proven to be impossible, I'm not sure we're on the same wavelength.
Yeah, and just because even
Oh.
if that was true, let's say that that's true, right? That like we can't prove what you're saying, or we can prove. It's kind of confusing on the wording. Their point is like that doesn't mean we can just choose to believe in whatever we want, right? Like we're still going to have limitations to what we do and don't think is real. So it's kind of arbitrary at that point.
Well, maybe I could help demonstrate this a little bit better. If I told you right now there is not an egg on your table, Lloyd, do you accept that?
Well, the fact that I'm looking at it means that I would have to not accept it.
Okay, so your purported observation contradicts the state of affairs I just verbalized, right?
Why purported? Direct observation contradicts the claim that there is no egg on my desk. Yeah.
All right. So you believe contradictions are impossible?
That's not what I said.
No.
Are we now in the process of putting words in each other's mouths?
So do you believe?
Go on.
The silence from Robin.
Robin, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Says,
you hear me?
We can hear you
there
now.
You go.
Proceed.
Okay, sorry about that. My phone. I'm on my phone, and so if it like the screen goes off, and I think my mic goes off as well.
Hate it when that happens, Robin from DC. When will phone manufacturers get their shit together? Oh. Sorry, go on.
Yeah,
carry on.
No, sorry, I didn't. I thought you. Okay, all right. Okay. So do you believe contradictions are impossible?
He clearly doesn't. He just pointed out that there was a contradiction, and therefore, that informed his worldview. So I
think contradictions happen all the time.
No, you just told me you object to what I said, or at least you don't accept what I said.
I contradicted what you said. I contradicted your premise. I didn't say therefore contradictions are impossible or anything like that. You're going one or two steps ahead without establishing the basis for doing so.
So then, if contradictions are not impossible, then it's also true that the egg is not on the table. That's a true statement.
No, it's not true because again, I'm looking at it.
What is happening?
Okay, so then, right? That's only viable in a world where contradictions are not possible. A true contradiction is when you have a state of affairs coexisting with its negation. So I'm negating the state of affairs that you just verbalized, which is that there is an egg on the table. If there is not an egg on the table, you're going to be. You just told me that.
Whoa! You don't just say I'm negating it. On what basis are you negating it? Especially if I'm actually showing you that the egg is here.
So I'm asking you on what basis are you negating it?
No, I've just asked you that. On what basis are you negating it?
I'm just presenting to you a state of affairs, and I want you to respond to it. So how do you respond? You're going to respond that you don't accept it, as you said. Okay. So on what basis? If
I slipped into a parallel universe where this makes sense.
If contradictions are possible,
the burden of proof is on the one who makes claims, right? Like you're the one making the claim that there's no egg on the desk here, and Lloyd says there is one on the desk there. He's citing his direct observation. What are you citing for your state of affairs?
I don't think you're understanding what I'm telling you.
Oh, definitely.
I'm not making definitely, yes.
Agree. Okay, on that we agree.
Okay, so I'm not making a claim that this is actually the case. I'm just proposing a state of affairs that I want you to respond to. And the state of affairs in question, the egg is not on the table. Okay? And so you said you do not accept that. And the basis for that is there's contradiction. Now, if contradictions are possible, then you cannot use contradiction as a standard unless you're being arbitrary.
Wait, why can't we cite contradictions?
Cannot be a standard.
What's stopping us from that?
Contradictions are possible, are they? Okay, are contradictions possible?
Yes. We'd already said that.
Okay, good. So then how did you rule out, aside from contradiction, what I just told you? If contradictions are possible, then how did you rule it out? Are you just being arbitrary?
I ruled out your premise that the egg is not on the desk using the observation that I'm sat at the desk and the egg is there. I'm really confused at this point. You've completely lost me. And I'm sure I speak for many people who are watching this video. We're going to have to move things on if this is the best you've got.
Do you know what a true contradiction is?
I know what the word contradiction. Yeah, I have a rudimentary grasp of English.
So a contradiction is, if you're verbalizing a contradiction, you're saying state of affairs A coexists with state of affairs not A at the same time and in the same sense. So for example, the grass.
Oh, so you're talking about philosophical definitions.
Green. No, it's just contradiction. And well, if you want to use philosophical definitions, I'm just talking about it in the sense that people understand it, generally speaking. A contradiction is state of affairs A, state of affairs not A at the same time in the same sense. So the egg is on the table and the egg is not on the table at the same time and in the same sense. That's a true contradiction. And you're telling me that can happen?
Oh, well, that's different from what we were just talking about. Lloyd did not say the egg is there and the egg is not there at the same time. He was just refuting that you were saying that there isn't an egg, and he's saying, yes, there is an egg.
It's kind of messed up that you would jump to that conclusion, to be honest.
Yeah.
I didn't jump to any conclusion. I want you to what your conclusion.
You're saying that we claim that these true contradictions exist, that we're saying things can exist and not exist at the same time. And Lloyd did not say that at all. You are jumping to that and saying that, oh, you must assume true contradictions exist. So yes, you're definitely jumping to that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Now that we have a common understanding of Now that we have a common understanding of contradictions, do you believe that contradictions are possible? That a state of affairs can exist with this negation?
Why are you making us repeat things that we've already said?
Yeah.
Why are you making? Why are we going background?
So then you did observe it, and you didn't observe it at the same time and in the same sense.
Right. Okay. I'm muting you, Robin from DC, because if your aim here is for us to have a productive, meaningful conversation, there are two things that you cannot do. Number one, ask the same question over and over and over again. And number two, put words in either my mouth or Dan's mouth. If you have a well thought out argument for anything, let's say the existence of God, then share it with us and we'll tell you what we think. But if your aim is to persuade us, if your aim is to convince us of your position, maybe it's just a difficulty that you have with communicating. And I'm not saying that to be patronizing. Not all of us are gifted communicators. But so far, what we've had from you is nothing but irritating nonsense. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just back up, not ask the same question over and over and over again. Be upfront about the argument that you're making, and not make this some kind of weird game where you're trying to make us say things that we don't want to say and don't actually think. Okay, now I am going to unmute you.
Okay. Is there any limit, so I'm just going to take what you said earlier. Since you already answered the question, you said contradictions can exist. So a state of affairs can coexist with this negation. Is there any limit as to
didn't say that
cannot be a contradiction?
No, yeah.
You never said that.
You've redefined what contradiction means.
That's why I'm trying to get clarification.
You've redefined. I don't mean necessarily a physical contradiction. So the egg being on the table and simultaneously not being on the table. I'm talking about, for example, a contradictory argument or someone contradicting what they've said previously. There are multiple.
Well,
there are multiple meanings or multiple ways that something can be contradictory.
Yes. So that's what I'm telling you what I mean, because I was asking you the question. So that's the definition I'm using of contradiction, is that a state of affairs coexists with this negation at the same time and in the same sense. That's what I'm saying when I say contradiction. And so what you just told me, it sounds like you don't believe, or you believe that contradictions are impossible, right?
Can an egg exist and not exist on a desk at the same time? I don't know. I don't think so, unless somebody can demonstrate that through like quantum physics or something. It doesn't seem
if we were living in a simulation,
possible.
It could be argued,
Yeah.
but we'd need to see evidence of that. You know,
Yeah.
if we're talking about
If
our
doesn't
material
appear
universe
so.
as understood by us within the limits of scientific understanding, then we can reasonably say the egg exists on the table and doesn't simultaneously not exist on the table.
Okay, is there any reason why that cannot be?
That we're aware of.
No reason.
I'm not aware of any hard evidence that we're living in a simulation, for example. So,
okay, but is there a reason why there cannot be contradictions, or is it just true for no reason?
It hasn't been demonstrated.
I wish this argument had like a play and a fast forward button, because I would be hammering the fast forward button on this argument right now. It feels like you're just trying to make us say something that's going to make us look silly.
No, I'm asking a simple yes or no question. It's a true dichotomy. Either logic,
you can ask whatever you like, but if the question doesn't make sense to us, why should we have to answer it? You don't. We're not like guinea pigs.
What doesn't make sense about the question?
You get to whoa. We aren't guinea pigs for your amusement, where you get to just throw nonsensical questions at us and demand an answer. That's not how this show works. You have to come. You're coming to us presumably with an argument, and as I said earlier, if there were a fast forward button here, I would be hammering it right now because I haven't heard anything coherent from you in terms of an argument. So what's your argument? Okay. None of this, what would be your response to this? Just tell us what your argument is.
Yeah. You don't, the point is that you don't have a ground to be critical about anything. Okay. Because
is that so?
Reality doesn't, there is no ultimate frame of reference for you to appeal to as to why anything can be and cannot be, which is why I'm asking you.
Thanks for demonstrating that so powerfully.
Well, that's what I'm asking you. That's the point of asking the question. Is the law of non-contradiction true for a reason or no? Is it true for no reason, arbitrarily?
I don't even know what that means.
Another silly question.
For a reason, or if it's true,
is it true for a reason? Is there a reason why it's true, or is it just true? It just happens to be true randomly, by chance, for no reason. It's a brute fact, a brute contingency.
What do we mean when we say reason? Are we talking about intent, purpose?
No, is there anything foundational or ultimate in your worldview, which is the reason why anything can be, and cannot be, which would include the second law of logic?
Okay, you lost me. I don't know what to tell you, man. You don't have
ground. Then you don't have grounds to be critical about anything.
Okay, I definitely disagree with that. The fact that you have
from Robin in DC, who's now been dropped, the atheists do not have a ground to be critical about anything for reasons.
Why, Lloyd? It's because we don't believe eggs can exist and not exist at the same time. If only we could. Lloyd, if you don't believe in that possibility for no reason, then you can't be critical of anything. I mean,
that was bonkers. That's the sort of thing where we need one or two calls to kind of warm us up for that sort of call, I think. And I feel like we got pushed in at the deep end there a little bit.
The most complicated conversation about eggs I've ever had in my entire life. I think what was happening was we were trying to get this idea that, well, why not? Why not was the reason here. Why not could the impossible be possible? Essentially was what I was getting at. But that, you could say that about anything. Why not? Why couldn't there be invisible zebras walking around us at all times that we can't sense with any of our senses? There could be, I guess. Does it matter? Is it something that we can actually know? Even if we can speculate, that's the thing. Just because something is possible doesn't mean that it's true. And the fact that you believe in God, the fact that you believe that this God provides you an ultimate reference, an ultimate frame point, does not actually give you an ultimate frame point. Sorry, that's the whole problem with presuppositional arguments. Is it's just the assumption that, well, if this thing is true, then it would be this. It's okay, but you have to show that the thing is true, and you can't. You just can't.
What I find fascinating is when people go to the trouble to call into shows like this, and then they're clearly not that interested in convincing or persuading. They apparently just want to sound superior, because I wasn't picking up any genuine effort to reason to make us understand what he was saying. No. It was literally just a case of, I'm going to go through this set of statements, and if you don't respond the right way, therefore you agree with my premise, which just isn't how it works in any normal conversation.
No. So, if I was trying to have that conversation with you, I would be trying to define my terms. I wouldn't just say according to the second law of logic, that's just, come on. That's just pandering to a specific audience that says, hey, look at how I'm trying to make these people look dumb because they can't cite my obscure philosophical texts on presuppositionalism and these works by people. I don't know. It's weird. It's
absolutely
not great.
Now, having taken that call, it's worthwhile pointing out that below the live chat, we do have a fundraiser. 100% of the proceeds go directly to the ACA. YouTube can't get their filthy mitts on a single cent. The ACA has not asked me to say that. We now have a channel that houses all of the shows. It houses them all under one roof, one big happy family of shows in audio podcast form. You can visit tiny.cc/AEN podcasts. You could also become a part of the Talk Heathen community in our fan-run Facebook page at facebook.com/groups/Talk Heathen FG. Now we have a couple of calls to get through. Our next caller is Michael from, does CO stand for Colorado? I think it does. Michael, you're on Talk Heathen. How are you?
Oh, hey, Lloyd. Hey, Dan. Yeah, Colorado. So I got a letter from a JW group, a local group here. And normally, they would come door to door, which that was one nice thing about COVID is that they stopped doing that. But I guess I just really want to know how to get them to stop.
You want JWs to stop visiting? Or actually, as you say...
Stop, yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. Can you believe that an egg can exist and not exist at the same time? Because that, my friend, might be impossible.
You don't have to answer that.
That sounds cool.
We are overlapping. We're overlapping our calls at this point. Michael, so yeah, you're right. In the pandemic, Jehovah's Witnesses have switched strategies. This is a population as a religion. This is very vulnerable to COVID because lots of them are aging. And so what they've done is they've hunkered down. They're not going to their kingdom halls. They're not doing the preaching work physically. What they are doing, and I can say this from first-hand experience because we live with some Jehovah's Witnesses, they are meeting together on Zoom on a Saturday morning, and they're coming up with all sorts of creative ways to bother people without visiting them on their doorsteps. And it sounds like a large part of that strategy involves sending random people random letters. So, if I were the recipient of such a letter, frankly, it would just go straight in the recycling. I wouldn't really feel like I needed to do anything. If, however, we're talking about a normal situation where it's not a pandemic and they're visiting you at your home, a very, very easy way to stop Jehovah's Witnesses from calling, which I don't think many people know about, is you can actually say to them, please put me on your do not call list. And what will happen then is they will make a notation and be sure not to visit you. Now, that doesn't mean that they might not still visit you occasionally by accident, and every once in a blue moon someone might call to see whether you still want to stay on the do not call list. But if you just want to not have witnesses call and you're not interested in debating with them or having kind of logical street epistemology sessions with them, then that's a very simple method that you can use.
I wish I was better at street epistemology to engage them a little bit further. But like, the other thing I don't understand is just like why they do it, why they feel the need to come up to people's houses and be like, have you heard this word, and just here's a bunch of Bible verses that mean absolutely nothing to even most people. It's just, why do they do that?
Yeah. Well, they feel that the Bible tells them to do it. There's a verse in the Gospels where Jesus says, go therefore and make disciples of people of all the nations. And there's also a verse where he tells his disciples to go out into the towns and villages preaching to people, which they understand to mean going literally from door to door. So they say, well, if this is what Jesus and his disciples were doing, which, you know, it can be argued that they weren't doing that, this is what we're going to do as well. But ultimately, you know, despite any kind of biblical or otherwise rationalizations they may make, ultimately it's something that keeps them busy. You know, when you're in a cult, it helps if you can have meaningless tasks to focus on that make you feel like you're engaged. If you just kind of sat there twiddling your thumbs, you know, thinking about what's on Netflix or what have you, you're not thinking about the cult. So they're going to give their followers as many things to do as possible that will keep them busy and either directly or indirectly help the organization. And obviously recruitment of new followers is directly in the interests of the organization.
Okay.
Yeah.
Annoying though it is. Yeah.
Yeah, very. You know, I'd also get them. I don't know if they were necessarily JWs, but like you know, before the pandemic hit, you get the people in a gas station or convenience store parking lot, you know, handing you pamphlets, and it's just like, go do something better with your life.
Well,
Wow,
you know, it's there's ideological reasons for doing it, and then there's also a lot more human ones. Like when I think of when I used to evangelize on campus, like a lot of it was just because I felt like I would look weird if I didn't, because the rest of the group that I'm hanging out with is kind of doing this thing. So I felt like I kind of had to do it too. Otherwise, whoa, what's wrong with me, right? Why is everybody doing this thing and I'm not supposed to? You know, and I think for a lot of, I can't speak for, you know, folks who've been JWs, but I think for a lot of religious organizations, it kind of starts out as like this kind of, oh, well, I'm in it for this reason, but there's these other things they do too. And it's kind of like a slow sort of, you know, adoption of different things from there. It's not always a rational uptake of every single practice and belief. It's kind of a slow burn in a sense. So I don't know. I for them, it might be, oh, I'm getting closer to the people in my group because I'm doing this activity, or I'm meeting these numbers that I'm supposed to be meeting for the organization. There's going to be different reasons there. So anyway, just my thoughts. You know what? I wish though,
Like if they
go ahead, Michael.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I wish that I had JWs talk to me more. I know that sounds weird, but I've never had it happen.
They never
only
talk
had it
to me
happen.
either. They never come. They never come and speak to me.
There you go. I guess I hear about these experiences and it's just never happened to me. I think it's happened one time in my last department, and I genuinely was busy with something and I couldn't talk to them. But I remember having the studio set up in my background and stuff. It was just like, oh man, if you only you guys knew what I did on my weekends, you know, like you probably wouldn't want to be talking to me. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't had that experience with a JW yet. I'd be curious to see what that would be like.
I also kind of wonder if like other people of different sects within Christianity, you know, look at a JW and be like, oh no, not these guys again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, if you think about it, the entire premise of literally going to someone's property and knocking on their door and saying, you know what, irrespective of what your beliefs are, I'm here to tell you they're wrong and mine are right. And I can't tell you, I mean, as much as we can laugh at the fact that Jehovah's Witnesses do this, and it is irritating, I can tell you as someone who has actually done that, and I did it for, I was a pioneer, so I was doing 70 hours per month of that. And I'm here to tell you, it's a very, very frustrating way to spend your day. You know, spending an entire day with, I mean, you do sometimes get conversations with people. Sometimes someone might be really, really lonely and they're just grateful of anyone to talk to. But for the most part, it's just rejection after rejection after rejection after rejection. And it's a very, very frustrating way to pass the time. And I would encourage kind of sympathy towards people who are put in this situation. They really are being exploited. And they if they ever were to wake up to the reality of what they're currently in right now, they would be furious at how much time this group is sapping from them. So as kind of irritating as it is, try to think of it more from the point of view of, these people are really being exploited. So we should have some sympathy for them,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, in that case, a sympathy, but then should, I guess not necessarily talk them out of their faith, but maybe say, hey, is there a better thing you could be doing than, being rejected like that, being, and feeling that way?
Yeah. A Jehovah's Witness would not respond to that sort of argument, because they would say there's nothing better that I could be doing right now than serving Jehovah. If you are interested, because initially you were saying, how do I get rid of them? If you're not interested in getting rid of them, and you're interested in engaging with them, the best thing that I can recommend is street epistemology. So look into what people like Anthony Magnabosco are doing. Look into, this kind of almost codified way of having a conversation with someone who has a polar opposite view to you. It is possible, amazingly, to have these very, very difficult conversations. It's just there's kind of an art to it that you need to have the patience to learn,
Yeah, I tried one, a couple of years ago, just really kind of getting started into some of the street epistemology, or seeing some of the stuff that Anthony Magbosco did. And yeah, I don't think I did well at all.
It does take practice. Yeah, definitely takes practice. Don't think that. I mean, if you want to find some encouragement, look at what Anthony's first videos of him trying this stuff, and he'll be the first one to tell you that he doesn't think they're very good. So don't think that this is something that you can just do in one day. It's definitely a skill. So,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely keep that in mind.
Michael, I hope we've given you some solid advice.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your call.
Yes, thank you,
All right,
Michael.
thank you for having me.
Take care. So that was Michael in Colorado, and a situation I'm sure many people can sympathize with.
Mm-hmm. Except for me, apparently. They don't want to talk to me too much.
They definitely don't want to talk to me.
Yeah.
I actually had them call at our house once after I disassociated. And so there were these two elders on our doorstep. Again, we live with believing Jehovah's Witness family members, but they were here to see me. And what had happened is someone had kind of prank filled in one of these online forms requesting a Bible study. So and that didn't go down too well with them, as you can imagine, because it looked like I might have pranked them, So So if you would like to continue this discussion, or not just this specific discussion, but the general discussion after the show, you can join me, not Dan, in ACD, our fan-run Discord server at tiny.cc/ACD Discord. Dan, unfortunately, as you can see, has a massive library behind him, and I understand he's going to be spending the rest of the day alphabetizing his collection.
I'm actually lost in this library right now. Luckily, I was able to find a computer to do this show, but as of right now, I can't actually escape the room that I'm in. So
it's a difficult situation, which I have been in before. Exit signs are useful. Laying a trail of breadcrumbs, just to make sure you're not going around in circles. I hope, I wish you luck. I really do. But I will be representing both of us on the Discord later.
That's terrifying, but okay. I guess we'll allow it.
I will literally be speaking for you in a very legal way. Also, make sure to check out the newest episode of the ACA show, The Non-Profits, which will air live at 3 p.m. Central Time today at youtube.com/the non-profits ACA. Now it's time to go to our next call. We have back for more Kevin from New York. How are you, Kevin?
Hey, you guys. Thanks for taking my call.
It's an absolute pleasure. You do like to call through, don't you? So what's on your mind today, Kevin?
Well, what I'm going to bring up to you guys is to try to bring more substance to where I'm coming from with all this. And
Okay.
so what I brought up to the call screener was, for the sake of debate, bringing up a dispute on biblical truths within a courtroom setting. The reason why I bring this up is because, well, I think we would agree that the theist would fall under the category of the defendant within the courtroom, and possibly the non-believer within the prosecution.
I
don't want to
straight away disagree with the premise. I straight away disagree with the premise. Shall I tell you why? Because I'm not actually interested in turning you from a theist to an atheist. And that may surprise you. You may think that I want to destroy your faith, and you may think of yourself as being on the stand and having to defend your faith. I'm not interested. I don't lose a wink of sleep at the thought of Kevin from New York spending the rest of his life as a theist. It's just that when it comes to my beliefs and my worldview, Kevin from New York has so far been unsuccessful and unpersuasive in persuading me that a theist God exists. So straight away, I reject the premise of you being in any kind of defensive situation, because you're not.
Yeah. And the other thing too is American courtrooms, at least, are not designed to demonstrate philosophical truths. They're pretty much there to figure out whether actions happened and whether they can demonstrate with sufficient evidence that that thing happened and can be tried thereafter. Unless we're talking about specific events in the Bible, which maybe we could go there, but it seems like you want to talk about whether the Trinity is a thing, or like theological concepts, which no court is going to ever have a discussion on, because there's nothing you could do with that.
Well, yes. Can we talk about that premise for a second, though? Because the reason why I bring that up is because the theist obviously has to, within these calls, have to defend the claim. Whether
No. That's not what the calls are about, Kevin. That's not what the calls are about. The calls aren't about anyone defending anything. The calls are about having, meaningful dialogue and sharing ideas. And so if I have an idea and you have an idea, and those two ideas are different, by the process of having a conversation, we can hopefully persuade each other. There's no kind of courtroom element to this whatsoever. So you're not going to kind of just say, well, just on this, because I don't have to. I don't have to go with you on this.
I hear exactly what you're saying, but can you not agree? The reason why I'm bringing this up is because can you not agree that the non-believer, and I'm not trying to straw man anyone here, but can we not agree that the non-believer has already decided that things having to do with the Bible are, it's a case closed of it's unreliable and doesn't apply to times that we're in?
That is a reason a non-believer might come to the conclusion, but people don't believe for good and bad reasons, in my opinion. So that would be a straw man. If you're not asking us directly why we don't believe, then
you could, for example, say, I assume everything in the Bible to be true, but I don't like the God that is described in the Bible. I think he's a bit of a character, and on that basis, I'm just going to question the whole concept and assume there must be a better explanation, and in the meantime adopt a position of non-belief. You could do that, for example.
Okay. Well, when you do that, I guess you could say that I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Where
Take
I was
your time
going with this is that I'm sorry.
I was just saying, take your time. I appreciate the fact that you're trying to, communicate perhaps complicated ideas, and I'm here for you. I genuinely want us to be able to move forward, because I know we've hit something of an impasse on different calls, and I'm kind of hoping this is the call that books the trend. So what have you got?
I know that you said that you reject this premise, but where I was going with all this is that in modern day, say for example, the Bible has no place. And
could you repeat that, because your phone just glitched a little bit in my ear? Could you just repeat what you just said?
In a say for an argument, in a secular society, the Bible has no place. And the reason why I brought up courtroom setting is because, for the sake of the Bible, it would have already reached the status of being condemned or unreliable. But where I'm going with all this is that even in the case of a condemned criminal, say for example, there exists there's no statute of limitations, in the sense that any new evidence can be used as a basis for an acquittal. And this new evidence that I'm talking about are apocryphal books, which have to be included with biblical stories.
Okay, so
okay. Now we're going a little bit down the rabbit hole, and if you could just allow me to kind of point to the elephant in the room, that there is a massive difference in how we deal with criminal law and, jail time for convicted criminals, and how we treat books that claim to be something that they're not, once it's established that they're something they're not. So you can't just you've made a huge assumption there, which I cannot go with.
Mm-hmm. And we don't need judges for that. In fact, we already have people with specific descriptions who decide what actually happened and what didn't, and those are historians. So they have their own historical methodologies to determine which sources are more reliable, what we can determine to be true or false about history, or what we can determine to certain degrees of certainty. Because a lot of history is kind of up in the air with things. There's a lot of things that people assume that we don't have the best evidence for. I will give that to a Christian who points that out any day. But if we're talking about the specific claim, specifically in the life of Jesus, let alone the rest of the Bible and what it has to say about floods and gardens and everything else, I would say that the evidence there is not reliable, and that a reasonable person should not believe that the events to be totally true. Are there some events depicted in the Bible that are true? Yeah, I mean, sure, but did a man rise from the dead 2,000 years ago to cleanse the sins of humanity? I don't think so. Not based on what I've seen.
Well, that's just it. This new evidence, which is included within the apocryphal text.
What is it with your obsession with? I'm really sorry, Kevin. You've obviously called through a number of times now, and I've been on a few of those calls, and almost every time we keep circling back to the apocryphal books. What is it about the apocryphal books that you're so obsessed with, and which makes atheists wrong?
Yeah, if anything, I would say the apocryphal books actually adds against as to evidence of facts of the Bible, because a lot of the apocryphal books,
man-made the whole process of the Bible's compilation is.
Man-made, but also,
yeah.
If we're talking about the acts of the different apostles, if you're talking about like Acts of John, Acts of Peter, and stuff like that, like they have some out there stuff that's different from what books in the Bible actually say happened. But also, even the apocryphal Gospels also have different times about different conversations about what Jesus did in his own life. So there's already contradictions in there. If anything, it makes the narrative even less reliable. So I don't even know how we could use them as evidence to show that these things did happen if they're saying all kinds of different things.
You picked a really interesting hill to die on.
Lloyd, you had asked me what is it about these apocryphal books that make atheists wrong. It's not just that. Not only would it make atheists wrong, but it would make all the denominations wrong in their understanding of any canon. Because it's simply, these books serve as new evidence. Simply,
they're not really new evidence, so are they? They've been there all the time. They've just been ignored because they're not as credible, or they're not considered to be as credible as the canonical Bible books. It's not new evidence. It's been there in Dan's library. I'm sure he's got a few apocryphal books.
Yeah,
behind
probably somewhere in this.
It serves as new evidence because it fills in a lot of gaps that's been put out there theological as
what's the one gap? Let's make this an elevator pitch deal where you and I are in the elevator and it's like, oh, hey dude, I know you're an atheist, Lloyd, but what you haven't considered in your atheism is apocryphal books, and here is the slam dunk gotcha thing that I found in the apocryphal books that disproves your atheist position. What is it? Go.
It's you find out questions that other people haven't found out. For example, the real reason behind Noah's flood. Second, you find out where Jesus was during the 3 days between his death on the cross.
I'm not sure you heard my question.
And what he was doing.
I'm not sure you heard my question because you're not answering it. What's the thing what you've done is you've listed some things that you found interesting in the apocryphal books from the viewpoint of a theist. Again, we're in the elevator, clock's ticking. Oh, yeah, you're an atheist. Okay, what you should know is there's this thing in the apocryphal books that proves the existence of God. Go.
Well, simply because we all understand that Jesus was supposedly God, the spokesperson.
No, we don't.
God. Yeah. And so he sums all of this up.
No, we don't.
He sums up a simple prophecy. I'm trying to be honest here. This is where I'm coming from. If I can just explain it.
I don't doubt your honesty, and I'm pretty sure I know where you're coming from, but I don't think you're interested in persuading me or Dan because you're not.
Yes,
you're not giving us anything to go on. You're just saying, "Oh, I'm fascinated with the apocryphal books as a theist. They talk about this, this, and this." It's just not relevant to us.
Yeah, you're saying it has these things. We don't know why we should believe you. I think is the point we're trying to make here, right? Lloyd and I have read some of the apocryphal books. We know what they say. We understand their contents, but we're not convinced that should give us any more credence to the existence of God or anything that Jesus did, or anything like that.
Given multiple opportunities to tell us what the thing is that we're missing, you haven't given us a single thing. And on that basis, I think we're going to have to leave it there. But thank you for calling in, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Take care.
Can I?
No. Listen. The thing is, there is some out there wild stuff in the apocryphal books that I understand why the early church wouldn't want in their canon, including Jesus killing a kid. I think it was Acts of John where he talks to bed bugs. I think it happens in there.
He's basically a wizard in some of them, isn't he? It's this weird Gandalf character.
Yeah,
who plays tricks on people. Yeah.
Okay, so these books say things. So what? I mean, we already have a book that says things, and we can't even be convinced of that, let alone more books. That's not going to kind of change our minds.
It's a little bit like saying, okay, I take your position that you think that the original Star Wars trilogy is fictitious, but wait until you see the prequels. That will prove everything. It just doesn't get you there at all.
Yeah.
So at this point, I'm kind of hoping that we have a promotional video. Do we have a promotional video?
I think so. Let's see.
they were like, oh, like anyone can really go that long without sex. And I'm like, y'all are not going to die for not having sex.
We're holding an event in a hotel that is rumored to be haunted. Somebody reported that a ghost crawled into bed with her and had sex with her. I don't want that to happen. And not that I think it's likely, but it just makes me I feel a little uneasy.
You're not getting yourself vaccinated. You can have issues with your reproductive cycle. So, ladies, gentlemen, take care of your baby ovens. Take care of your wee-wees, folks. Get the shot.
You know, get involved, get on that list, get read out. Maybe if you have a funny name, you'll become the honorable mention.
Unless it's like mayonnaise 55, then don't do it.
Yeah, you off.
Let's not curse each other out. That's unnecessary.
How about you stop telling me what language I can use on my show, and you learn how to have a conversation where you acknowledge point and stop trying to dodge.
Matt in typical form there, and ghost sex, is a thing, it seems. So lots of good
surprisingly more common than you'd think.
And I would think a lot because there've been some situations which I won't go into where it's like so anyway.
Wait a minute. What do you mean you won't go into that, Lloyd? What are you saying? Is there something we should know?
It's just.
Do you believe in ghosts, Lloyd? Is this?
I feel like I'm on the spot now. Anyway, if you read the apocryphal books, it's all in there. So we have a caller now from Oregon who hails by the name DJ. DJ, how you doing? How can we help you?
I'm doing fine. How are you gentlemen today?
Very, very well indeed. Are you an actual DJ or is that just your initials?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Are you an actual DJ? Do you like mix music?
They happen to be my initials.
No.
It's my first name and my middle initial. So it is it's not my profession, not even my long shot.
He's still an actual DJ, Lloyd. I mean,
okay.
It still exists.
I just wanted to clarify.
I can push play on my iPhone iTunes.
That counts.
So yes, I'm a DJ.
That counts. It's all fair. That does it for me. On that basis, I call myself a DJ as well. So, what's your question or observation for us?
Well, I'll try to make it both an observation and a question. I've been listening and watching all of the ACA shows for many, many years. And every time I hear someone like your very first caller, the presup caller, they're all handled pretty much the same way. I'm not claiming to have a new groundbreaking way of dealing with them. But they always seem to kind of push back on the presup with more of a philosophical kind of a approach, saying why this doesn't work, why that doesn't work. But what I don't hear mentioned often is I don't think that's their goal. Because many, many years ago, I assume you both are familiar with Saitan Rugenkate.
Mm-hmm.
With who, sorry?
Sorry, what?
Saitan Rugenkate, who is a very popular presuppositionalist.
No, sorry, I'm not.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I am.
Okay, well, good. So anyway, he repopularized presup for a while. But he was caught on camera once telling his followers or whatever that the purpose of the presup is not to convince anybody or anything like that. It is purely to confuse the issue. It's purely to do what you guys pointed out to Robin, which is you're just trying to get us to say something that's, that sounds ridiculous.
Railroad the conversation.
Here's the thing but here's the thing that I think that the precepts don't get what they're doing. And I'm not trying to give them pointers. I think they're ridiculous. So I wanted you guys' opinion on this particular issue. Is that when you believe in God and the Bible, you are pretty much saying that you believe in a lot of fanciful stories. Is that generous enough, or is that correct enough?
I mean, the Bible's
they
a big
probably
book.
wouldn't put it that way. They probably wouldn't put it that way, but that's certainly from our perspective what's happening. Yeah.
Okay, from our perspective. Okay, so but would you agree that they at least have to realize that if they're going to talk about the Bible, they have to be prepared for questions about things like talking snakes and walking on water and that kind of thing, right?
Sure. I think I'd meet you there.
Okay, so if you're if you pride yourself as a great arguer of the presup position, you know you're going to get questions about that. And you know that can sound ridiculous. If you found yourself talking about talking snakes and flying people, whatever, you're going to kind of sound ridiculous. So what you have to do is you have kind of like two choices. You can either take those stories head on, or you can keep the other person from bringing up those stories. I'm sure there's other options too. But it's sort of like, if you think about it, if I call in claiming that I believe in Spider-Man, I can either talk about the climbing on walls and superhuman strength, or I can focus on the fact that he was a photographer and lived in New York. That kind of a thing. I want to keep the supernatural things as far away from the conversation as possible because it sounds stupid. So the presup, my take on the presup is they're not actually wanting to talk about philosophy. They want to keep the non-believer from even talking about the topic. They want to remove you from the conversation. They want to remove you from the conversation because as soon as I was clapping in my kitchen making pancakes as I was listening to you say, I wish I could fast forward this guy to get to the question. And we finally said, you guys don't have a rational basis for talking about anything. And that's it's not a philosophical thing. It's not a conversational thing. It's a tactic. They don't want you to talk about anything. So they're telling their followers, don't listen to these people who talk about flying snakes and miracles because they can't talk about anything. They want to remove you from the conversation. So anytime I hear any of the shows listen or entertain anybody who even remotely sounds like they're going towards precepts, it's like you don't want to have a conversation. You just want to say that I have no right to voice my opinion.
Yeah, I think your insight there is pretty relevant. I mean, so when at least when I host, I'm on these shows, right? I can't assume too much about the intention of people who call in because I think about when I was a Christian and my sincere beliefs, and I don't want to make too many assumptions about why people believe and what their motives are. But I will say with presuppositionalists, the intention seems to always be that they're trying to add weight to their allegations, and their allegation being that you aren't rational or you don't have an ultimate frame of reference. In other words, you can't even come to the conclusions that you do because your philosophical methodology is based on something that's bunk. That's kind of their whole shtick. And you're right. I've never had a conversation too much, maybe like once or twice with a precept on like actual claims of the Bible or, anything else. It does seem to be just this railroading of, well, you can't believe the things that you do because you're just totally off base. Like that seems to be where the conversation goes every time. And that always gets done by, the similar kinds of patterns. It's using jargon that can be confusing or hard to understand on first listening, or making assumptions about things that you believe, which we never actually said, which happened today. It's pretty much happened every single time I've had conversations with precepts. So there are definitely tools and tricks to these methods of conversation that just wouldn't really convince the average person. I don't know why they don't see that, because if a preceptor could honestly give me a tally of how many people they've convinced by their arguments versus how many haven't, what would that tally realistically look like? Because I think it would be pretty high on the side of not convinced, right? But I don't know.
Well, I think we're all aware of the very famous Bible story of doubting Thomas, where when Thomas came back in the apostles and they said, "Hey, we just saw Jesus," and he said, "Oh, really? I don't believe you." They all said, "Well, you see, the theory of non-contradiction can't exist and be existed the same way."
Yeah.
See, they tried that on Thomas first, and that didn't work, and that's when Jesus came in, because no one ever uses that to convince anybody. But I think the problem is that. Go ahead.
I totally get where you're coming from, and I think again you offer some very cogent insights into the specific problems with these types of callers. I'm just going to kind of say a few things now that might help shed light on the whole situation, because I look at the comments and I see people getting frustrated when we get callers like that. And they're like, why are you wasting time on this type of caller? And, you know, quite often it's because there aren't that many callers. Because the thing you have to remember, without wanting to sound too arrogant to any theists who are watching, you know, let's just say it, we're right. You know, the atheist position of not believing in a deity unless evidence is shown is the correct position. And it's difficult in this day and age where there is a proliferation now, thanks to the internet largely, of logic and reason. We're on the winning side. And so I think it's going to get harder and harder with each passing year, quite frankly, or at least you would hope so, for there to be theists who are bold enough to actually present their arguments on a show like this. So sometimes when we have a frustrating caller, it's because that's the only caller. And we're not going to ignore them and just talk between ourselves when we have a caller who's waiting to engage, because you never know, maybe an interesting conversation can come out of it. But if you are one of those viewers to Talk Heathen or the Atheist Experience and you're frustrated at the nature of the calls, there is something that you can do. Reach out to local theist groups, local churches, local religious communities, and say, these people want to speak to you and they want to hear your arguments. And if your arguments are good, you're going to be broadcasting those arguments in front of thousands of people, because that's the viewership of these shows. So if you're right, please call into these shows. I hate to kind of sermonize, but I feel as though that's ultimately where the frustration comes from. Why are we allowing these people so much airtime? Quite often it's because there just are so few people willing to defend their position.
Yep, it's true.
Well, I totally don't at all. But I mean, given that I've been listening to these shows for many years, the more you listen, the more that the calls sound the same. And that's I'm not calling it. And by the way, I'm not calling it to say, why do you bother with these callers?
Sure.
I think my final comment, I guess, would be is that I appreciated your way of dealing with it, because as soon as I personally hear people talk about any kind of philosophical reason for believing in God, and it goes toward the, what's your foundation for rational thought, I want the host to do what you did, which is say, can you get to the point? Because I guess my point about the whole supernatural thing is, if you say, you can, look, I'll talk about your precept, I'll talk about your foundation for rational belief all you want, but just answer me one thing. Can you talk to me equally about the fantastical things that happen in the Bible, as opposed to, why I for some reason can't even form a rational thought, because everybody gets up every single day not thinking about
presupposing your ultimate position. Presupposing your ultimate position, philosophical position, to be valid. What specific brand of religion would you propose? So great tip there, and I really appreciate you calling in and sharing those insights. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, DJ.
Thanks a lot, guys. You guys are great. I love all the different shows, and you're all wonderful.
And were the pancakes good?
I have not had one yet, but my son apparently thinks they're delicious.
Excellent. So at least the pancakes were good. Okay.
That's good.
Take care, DJ.
Back to the oven. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.
What a nice man.
Yeah, it is nice. It's important to point out, too, with these things that, okay, like, I don't know a single person on earth who doesn't have some kind of problem with their epistemology, right? That there's some sort of falter to the way they understand things. That seems to just be the world that we live in. Pointing that out is not novel to me, and it shouldn't be novel to anybody who's having these kinds of discussions. I think DJ makes a great point in that, look, we get it. Yeah, my methodology for figuring out if things are true or not are flawed. So what? So are yours. Prove that you can do it better than me. How the hell do you know that you think you can do it better? I'd love to see it, but they just can't, and they won't. Yeah. And in my opinion, probably never will. So You know, that's all there is to it.
I've joked on previous shows. Maybe this will be the show where we get proof for God. And there never. I think we can say confidently there never will be a show. It's more about just showing, if anything, that a respectful dialogue is possible, and that maybe a little bit of headway can be made now and then. If viewers are enjoying this show, please remember that you can support it on Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Talk Heathen to me. And speaking of Patreon, I'd like to just shout out a few names. We have Eric Tweet, who's a patron. We have CJ Dennis, Dinglebury Jackson, Balaam's Donkey, Paul Lear, and the Great North American Dingaloo. In my opinion, unquestionably the most prestigious of all Dingaloos. So thank you so much to those patrons for your support of the show. Seriously, it really does mean a lot, and it helps make these productions possible. We have another caller on the line. Let's see here. Michael from Florida. I understand you want to know, how can anyone prove the God of the Bible when it contradicts itself so much? Michael, you're on Talk Heathen.
Hello, how are you doing? I hope
very well indeed. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Here it is. Yes, the God of the Bible, according to the Bible, can never prove its existence or about anything to anyone, not ever. After all, this God lied, presented deception, and deceived. So how can this God present any truth to anyone, fact from fiction, which would include it telling anyone about its storied existence, which could be truth or a lie? How could anybody know the difference?
That's your go-to argument, is it, when you're speaking to theists?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if a God was speaking to me, that might lend credibility to his actual existence. You know, whether or not the things he says are true or not, that's one thing. But like, he has to be there first in order for me to like interrogate that. So, you know, the actions of the God almost kind of doesn't matter in that sense. I'm kind of just wondering, like, is he even there at all? You know, that's what I would wonder first.
Right. Yeah, but see, you know, with all these different verses, you know, about lying and, you know, being deceiving, how would anybody know the truth?
I mean, I feel like you're preaching to the choir. You know, like
so. If I can kind of slightly rephrase your argument,
know that the Bible. We both know that the Bible is bogus and everything like that. You know.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is that we know that.
Yeah.
But quite often when we're speaking to theists, they don't know that, and they don't know a lot of basic Bible scholarship. They don't know about the origins and historicity of many of the Bible books. I would probably recommend a slightly more muted lead-in argument when you're speaking to theists. I think ultimately what you're suggesting is, you know, either God is deist or theist. If it's deist, then he's not manipulating world events, doesn't require us to worship him, and we don't need to belong to any religion. So we can kind of discount the deist proposition as having any real relevance, or at least I can. The theist God, however,
I agree with that.
The theist God, however, is where there's a whole bunch of strings attached. And if you accept this particular theist God, you need to do X, Y, Z, and there are any number of churches or religious groups queuing up to have you follow them and donate to them and give time to them based on their unique channel to this particular theist God. And I kind of agree with your position, which is to say, maybe the actual theist God can be disproven by how self-contradictory it is. So in other words, the Bible describes God as being a God of love, and yet we have this God of love obliterating all life on earth apart from one family, and commanding that gay people be stoned to death. So, these are contradictory. These are contradictory claims. So, if a theist God exists, the very best that we can say is that it's a self-contradicting God. I think I would be on board with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would add though, because like to when we're talking about God, and if we're using the Bible as a source, like there could be a theist God that the Bible just isn't describing to, right? And obviously interpretations of texts are going to be a minefield that you just want to avoid when you're talking with somebody. I agree with Lloyd in the sense that this wouldn't be my go-to argument either, because there's a lot of assumptions that have to be made that the other person understands exactly what you're talking about when you're citing these particular instances. And even if they do understand, they might interpret those instances differently. So you're going to get pushback right away, I think, if you start with something like that. I wouldn't even use the Bible when talking about God. I would just use like what makes that person individually convinced of a God's existence, and just go from there, because it may not be the Bible. Like, you'd be surprised how many Christians don't care about the Bible, honestly. Like, just it doesn't even go into their worldview at all when they talk about what God means to them and what God does something for them. They're more interested in their lived experiences, and that could be a huge factor too. So they may say, well, God has been really great to me and has done all these things in my life, and that's how I know that he's real. That has absolutely nothing to do with the Bible. Absolutely nothing to do with the Bible. Could be talking about something else entirely. So you have to be really careful when you cite arguments like that.
And I've been doing this ever since I was 14, and now I'm 60. And I've talked, with so many people on this. Mm-hmm. And, if I could, I'd like to share with you how I became an atheist. Is that okay?
Well, we have other callers. I'm looking.
Okay.
Actually.
If that's
no, go on. If you could kind of give us a condensed version of how you became an atheist, that might be nice.
Yeah.
Okay. It'll be really quick, and you might get a good laugh out of it. Two of my, I was born Jewish, and two of my friends, they were Christian, and we were comparing my Torah with their Bibles, and we noticed that the book of Ruth was out of chronological order. So we decided to take it to their priest, and they were so smug and all, and their pastor said, well, maybe it's us that is wrong. So bang, I knew that the text was all wrong, and immediately I became an atheist. At the age of 14.
Wow.
Well, to be honest with you, Michael, I would say that's not the best reason why you could become an atheist. And if I was a Christian apologist, I would go ham on that.
And I started to read my Torah, and with all these genocides and with all the hate, and all that stuff in the Torah, it further, became, I further became an all-out atheist. Mm-hmm. But I appreciate you taking my call, and more power to you. And thank you very kindly for exactly what you do. It is so appreciated. And thank you, thank you, thank you. And I get that you have other calls. Please take care, and please continue for exactly what you do.
Well, coming from someone of your experience, we really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate you calling in.
All righty. Take care. Okay? Okay. Bye-bye.
All right.
Thanks, Michael. I really hope that I am so, pleasant and coherent when I'm at that ripe vintage. He's a really nice guy, wasn't he? Yeah.
I hope I make it to 60 at this point. Yeah. With climate change and everything.
There's
I don't know.
No more pandemics, maybe. Who knows? But, Michael, really nice guy there. Yeah.
Yeah, I would, I just want to touch on this point too, that when we talk about atrocities in the Bible, when we talk about things that you and I would agree are bad, that's, again, the stuff that I just wouldn't start with in talking with people about it. Because one, reframing and recontextualizing is always going to be an issue there. And while it can appeal to the emotional senses, that doesn't mean that God couldn't be real. Like, that in itself wouldn't convince me that a God couldn't exist. It may not be the God you think it is. It may not be the God of total peace and love that you were taught as a Christian, but there's a lot of Christians that don't even care about that. There's a lot of Christians that say, I know my God is a God of war and has done these things, and support him in that. So you have to be defensive and ready for all kinds of positions out there on God. And if we're talking about the actual God claim, that's separate from whether he's done things that are wrong or not. You know what I mean?
I definitely agree that there are multiple reasons why someone might be a theist, and it's not always just Christianity or Judaism. It could be any number of different versions of it. So always better to say, what do you believe and why, and kind of take it from there. But I can't help but strongly sympathize with his basic proposition. The God of the Bible is self-contradictory, if we're being honest.
100%. 100% agree with that.
So we have now Sheri from Ohio, who has a question about positive atheism. Sheri from Ohio, you are on Talk Heathen.
Hi, Lloyd. Hi, Dan. So my question is, I've heard that there are some groups that they go into like hotels and so forth, and they'll put like stickers on the Bibles in the hotels. And my question is, how do you feel about that? Because would that be considered to be like a form of vandalism? Because I know some people would get upset about that. Or which would be better if we do bookmarks instead of stickers? Because then you're not altering the Bible, you're just putting something inside the Bible.
I would personally, we're talking about like Gideon Bibles and books of Mormon, which is typically what you would find in a hotel drawer, isn't it? And speaking for myself personally, given the fact that the thing's going to be open so little anyway, I would err on the side of caution. And if I was going to do anything like that, it would be a bookmark rather than anything that could be construed as defacing someone else's property, or because it could as well be deemed that even though the hotel didn't arrange for the Bible to be there per se, because it's on the hotel's premises, it's the hotel's property. So I would personally prefer to err on the side of caution and not go anywhere near anything that could even remotely be construed as criminal. I'd probably just put a note in there or a leaflet, but that's just me.
Yeah, at first I thought you were talking about Christian groups that put stuff on the Bible, but you actually mean like non-believers who are putting like content warnings, who are saying like, oh, this book has genocide and stuff like that. And I don't know. I think it's it might get the word out there, but is it doing more harm than good? I almost think it might be doing more harm, because again, putting something like that out of context, I think confuses people. And also just I don't know, it's easy for people to give assumptions about you and what you're doing, especially if you're willing to deface a holy book like that. Would just people's defenses just go up right away. It doesn't matter if the sticker, what it's saying, is true, which I think it would be saying is true if it's talking about all the awful stuff in the Bible. Really, it's just about, that's just basic marketing right there, right? What is this the best marketing strategy for the atheist position? I think that's what I would wonder, and I don't know that it is. I'm not saying that I know what the best thing is either, but I think that can easily lead credence to people thinking that you're a hate monger and that you're just saying stuff just to say stuff without context like that. I'd much rather say something like that in person rather than just see it on a book somewhere, because then there's a conversation at least to be had. But without that, there's just no context to why the sticker's even there.
What do you think, Sheri?
Yeah, I agree. I think that it would probably be better if it was just a bookmark or a leaflet, like you said, as opposed to like a sticker. Of course, you also have the concern that someone who became offended might like blame the hotel for it, and maybe they could get into a legal argument with the hotel over it.
I guess with any kind of marketing, and ultimately lots of activism just boils down to marketing, doesn't it? Just boils down to trying to get a message across. And when you're doing any kind of marketing, you need to be thinking about your target audience. And presumably your target audience is not atheists staying in hotels. It's theists staying in hotels. And if you're a theist and you open your hotel drawer and a Bible has been, in their mind, defaced by atheists, you're going to be thinking, I'd better not become an atheist, because then I'll do dicky things like this to people's holy books.
Right.
You know, I don't want to be that kind of person. So
if I had to put a bookmark, I think what I would do is I would just have a list of questions asking, like, why do you believe in God? Or what do you think about this event? Or what do you think about this? And I think that's a little bit more interesting than just saying, this is all bad, you shouldn't look at this, because that can look a little bit like, I don't know, like you have an agenda there and you might not be able to be reasoned with. And I would always want to present myself as saying, well, I can be reasoned with. These are just a list of questions that I still haven't had answered yet for me. And maybe you have those answers, you know. So I don't know. I think that would be a better route. But, you know, leaving stuff on people's property, yeah, it's definitely not clear cut there.
I've also heard of groups of actually stealing the Bible and replacing it with something else, mostly just, you know, random books and so forth. And
I just have to ask, what, you know, how is the target audience interpreting this? And also, you know, and I'm saying this as an activist. In fact, you know, tomorrow I'll be celebrating 10 years as an activist. Are we really so insecure about our position that we're going to go around doing this? You know, there's got to be more productive ways of getting our message across than messing around with people's Bibles, you know?
Yeah, I wouldn't want a Christian bookmark in a book that I find at, I don't know, the atheist section of a bookstore. So I don't know if I want to do the same for that. You know, I would rather not stoop to that kind of level. But that's a personal thing, you know?
Yeah. So hopefully
anyway.
that's answered your question. I really appreciate your call, though, Sheri.
Okay. Thank you so much.
No problem at all.
Have a good
Take
one.
care. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. So that's about all we have time for. All that remains is to reiterate that there is a fundraiser below the live chat. 100% of the proceeds go directly to the ACA. YouTube can't get their hands on any of it. You can also become a member. You can click the join button below the video. You can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Talk Heathen to me. We have a channel that houses all of the shows of the ACA in audio podcast form, a bit like a Netflix for the ACA. You can visit tiny.cc/AEN podcasts. You can become a part of the Talk Heathen community in our fan-run Facebook page at facebook.com/groups/Talk Heathen FG. If you want to continue the discussion with me and not Dan after the show, you can join me. I'm not rubbing it in too much, am I?
It seems like you are a little bit, but all right, okay.
You can join me and not Dan on the ACD. Dan will be alphabetizing his library collection. It's a fan-run Discord server anyway at the tiny.cc/ACA Discord. Also, make sure to check out the newest version of the ACA show, The Non-Profits, which will air live at 3 p.m. Central Time today. YouTube.com/The Non-Profits ACA. I want to have a look at our beautiful crew and see what they're doing. Hopefully catch them in the process of doing something very unpleasant. Oh no, they're all actually being quite respectable for a change. So there they are. Wonderful, fine, smiling people. Rays of sunshine, all of them. And they won't be on the Discord anyway. I'm just going to be all on my lonesome. But sometimes this host just has to walk a lonely road all by himself.
Lloyd, I'll write you a card. All right, if it means so much to you, I'll do that.
Or you could send me some love rings. Can you send me some love rings, please? I'm feeling.
Send some love rings.
Can we
if I got
radiate? There they are. They're They're a little bit slow, but they're nonetheless radiating out there in all their love ringiness. Viewers, it's been a blast hosting this week's show. That's all we have time for. Special thanks to ObjectivelyDan for some insightful responses to today's callers. Please tune in for next week's show. And as always, I'd just like to say, whether or not you believe, if you are an essential worker, we want to thank you for your service. If you don't believe, this is your community. If you do believe, we don't hate you. We're just not convinced.
Not convinced. Yep. Y'all have a good one.
Take care.
We want the truth, so watch Truth Wanted live Fridays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTW and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/calltw.